Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a highly specific, high-stakes role in the real estate world, the temporary seller finance specialist. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, right? But I'm absolutely thrilled to break this all down for you. If you've ever looked at a complex real estate deal and thought, man, I need a PhD in math just to understand what's happening here, well, you're in the exact right place. In this explainer, we're going to look at the exact mechanisms, the boundaries, and the truly fascinating financial architecture behind this super specialized position. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We'll be systematically breaking down this complex system by looking at the FSBO financing trap, the time value of money, the three financial pillars, navigating strict legal lines, and finally, the hitting note buyer. So I want to start by posing a really critical question to you to kick things off. What actually happens when a homeowner decides to become the bank? Normally, when you sell a house, you go to closing, sign a mountain of papers, and walk away with a nice, big, simple check. But with seller financing, that whole dynamic changes completely. You aren't getting that lump sum all at once. Instead, you're taking on a multi-year stream of payments that's honestly fraught with financial liability. It is a massive leap from just being a homeowner to suddenly managing a complex financial instrument. Which brings us to our first main concept, the FSBO financing trap and the incredibly high stakes in seller financing. Navigating a for sale by owner, or FSBO transaction, is tough enough on its own, right? But when a seller decides to just add financing into the mix, it opens up a massive knowledge gap. Suddenly, the seller is acting as the lender, and getting the terms wrong on that loan can literally cost them tens of thousands of dollars. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide. Over on the bank mortgage side, things are predictable, they're heavily regulated and standardized. But seller financing, that is the Wild West. Everything from interest rates to payment schedules to balloon payments is completely flexible. And every single one of those variables directly changes the present value of the note. Like if you drop the interest rate by just 1% to appease a buyer, the seller could instantly lose thousands in note value. If the seller wants more cash up front, well, that changes the monthly payments, which changes the interest rate, which then dictates how sellable that note is down the road. It gets incredibly complicated, incredibly fast. Now, before our temporary seller finance specialist can even pick up the phone to help, there is a strict legal green light required. The homeowner absolutely must already be publicly advertising the property for sale. This is so crucial to understand. The specialist doesn't find buyers. They don't list properties. They literally only enter a deal that is already in motion. They aren't real estate agents. They're stepping in purely to solve the math problem of a transaction that the seller already initiated. Moving right along to Section 2, time value of money, or the mathematical blueprint. Forget property marketing here. This role is entirely about complex financial modeling. The whole job revolves around the time value of money, or TVM. Basically, this is the process of calculating what a future stream of income is actually worth today. You know the saying, a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow? Well, when you apply that to a flexible, custom seller-financed note, calculating it requires some seriously sophisticated spreadsheets. The specialist's entire job is crunching these numbers, running different scenarios, and giving the seller true financial leverage by maximizing the present-day value of their asset. Next up, Section 3, the three financial pillars, which make up the final deliverable. So what's the actual output of all this math? After crunching the numbers, the specialist delivers a financial proposal built on three crystal-clear pillars. Pillar number 1 is the immediate cash benefit. This proposal clearly lays out the exact amount of upfront cash the seller is going to receive right at the close of escrow. Usually this comes from the buyer's down payment, and sometimes it includes cash generated by immediately selling a portion of the note to an investor. This is the seller's immediate liquidity, the actual money they can use right away to move, buy another home, or just pay off debt. Let's move to and see how this builds with pillar number 2, monthly income. This is the exact amount the seller will receive every single month. For a lot of FSBO sellers, the whole point of offering financing in the first place is to turn their home equity into a predictable, passive income stream. This number essentially becomes their new residual income, allowing them to budget securely for the years ahead. And finally, we have the third pillar, the balloon payoff. This number is entirely about risk management. Look, most seller finance deals are not structured for 30 years, mostly because the seller doesn't want to be the bank forever. Instead, they're usually modeled with a massive lump sum payoff required in, say, 3 to 7 years in the future. The specialist carefully models what that final payoff needs to be so the seller gets their full equity while totally mitigating the risk of holding onto a long-term loan.
Now for Section 4, Navigating Strict Legal Lines, also known as the High Wire Act.
Having all this mathematical power requires extreme caution. Real estate and mortgages are heavily licensed, highly regulated fields, so the specialist is really performing a high-wire act here and has to operate inside a very rigid compliance box. Crossing these lines makes the whole model completely fall apart. The sources outline 4 major restrictions they absolutely must follow. 1. They are not practicing or selling real estate without a license. 2. They are definitely not finding buyers. 3. They are not functioning as a mortgage broker. And 4. They do not give legal, accounting, or tax advice. They are strictly mathematicians. While their calculations directly impact capital gains and taxes, their job definitively stops where the tax return begins. For any of that advice, the seller has to consult a CPA or an attorney. So the crucial point is really understanding the specific boundary between the temporary seller finance specialist and a licensed mortgage loan officer, or MLO. If the specialist is crunching all the numbers anyway, why can't they just pre-screen the buyer? Well, because assessing a buyer's federal credit risk and ability to repay is a heavily regulated action. That requires an MLO license. The specialist's expertise is strictly valuing the note for the seller. The MLO's job is assessing the borrower's risk for the system. Those 2 roles must remain surgically separate to avoid the specialist acting as an unlicensed broker. With all these tight restrictions, you're probably wondering, how do they actually get paid legally? Well, it's definitely not some private, under-the-table check. The fee is paid legitimately by the FSBO seller via the HUD-1 settlement statement. They are officially classified as a third-party service provider. This exact phrasing brings their fee completely out of the shadows and itemizes it right on the official, federally mandated closing receipt. This ensures full compliance with RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which is there to protect consumers from any hidden fees. Let's wrap up the process with Section 5, the hidden note buyer and the macro ecosystem. Let's zoom out to the macro ecosystem for a second. Who is actually executing this perfectly modeled transaction? There are 3 parties involved here. Step 1 is the property seller. Step 2 is the property buyer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Step 3, the hidden client, the third-party note buyer. The whole reason that complex time value of money calculation matters is because the seller rarely wants to just wait 7 years for all their money. They want cash now. The specialist structures the note so perfectly that it becomes this incredibly attractive financial product for an outside entity. The third-party note buyer steps in, buys the future stream of payments, and supplies the immediate cash the seller desperately wants. Which brings us to the final thought of this explainer. The specialist is an advisor optimizing a deal structure, right? But the external note buyer is the one providing the actual liquidity. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative question drawn straight from our sources. How reliant is this entire concept of seller financing on the existence of a robust market of external note buyers? It really suggests that this isn't just about selling a house. It's about structuring a financial product specifically for the secondary market. Think about that interconnectedness the next time you look at real estate trends. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.